Right, the session that I'm going to make pitch for is capacity building, knowledge gaps, and a research agenda on water and heritage. Of course, we have the issue here is about urbanizing world. We all know that how urbanization is happening. The number of people living in cities is now equal those in villages already in 2007, and it's constantly on rise. And we know that 1.29 billion people will be added into cities between period of 2007 and 25. And as you see here, the way the density has been increasing in some cities, especially those in the developing world, is really very alarming. And with this kind of urbanization, and especially those cities which are coastal or which are very much connected with water, they are going to be much more vulnerable than before. We have examples of flooding which have been shown before. This is in Pakistan, which happened in 2010, and what we figure out is that a lot of damages to cities which are located along the rivers. So with urbanization, with more and more people living in cities along, and those which are along the river lines are really becoming vulnerable. Another example, it's not just excess of water, it's also lack of water, which is becoming an issue. I'm giving you example from Bangalore, where the loss of traditional ecology due to urbanization is in fact posing big damage to the local ecology. So this was the ecology before, but what we see now is that interconnectedness of lakes, canals has been all broken apart due to urbanization that has happened over the last few decades. Then we have already heard a lot about the impact on climate change, and we know that hydrometeorological disasters are increasing, and this is just a graph to show how, and already Anthony and others have shown how climate change is really a big threat to face. And examples are more and more. We have Ayodhya floods that have been already talked about. There were cloudbursts, and which are affecting heritage, which is not really used to the kind of climate that they are being exposed to now. So this is adobe constructions, mud constructions, where excess rainfall is in fact creating a lot of damage to this heritage. Very recent floods that happened in Himalayan region in the northern part of the country, again, a very clear reminder of what climate change can bring to us and can damage the settlements which are located right next to the river. So glacial melt, coupled with the development that happened along the river, has created this kind of devastation, which was never there before. So we can see this happening. There is, therefore, a need to identify the contribution of heritage in meeting water challenges. And this is something that we'll be really talking about in our session. How do we identify, how do we figure out that contribution, and how do we identify the knowledge that needs to be built in order to meet these challenges? Another example of what's happening is very ironical. On one hand, we have traditional knowledge systems. There are traditional water systems that are there to cater to people's needs, but in the same village, this is the situation, because we are no longer using those water systems that were there from long time before, but now we are having water scarcity in the same village where there were these traditional settlements. So we are faced with this huge challenge, where we have in many settlements, many cities, such kind of very intricate, very complex water systems that have been managed by communities for generations and have sustained because of these systems. Another example, we have had very good example by Tracy about how people have been trying to, how in Holland you have been trying to live with flood risks, and how technology has evolved. But it's not new. We have examples from traditions where people have in fact evolved, and they have organized their life around floods to which they are exposed regularly. This is example of an island which is one of the largest river islands along the delta of Brahmaputra in the eastern part of the country in India. And again, it's facing a lot of erosion and flooding. But what we see when we look at how people were traditionally living, they were not constructing very big embankments. They were in fact having very flexible way of making a kind of traditional methods which would collect the clay, and the same clay would be used for making pottery by the people. So it was not a system, it was a system by which people would sustain by using the very flexible traditional systems of living with nature. Also, traditional vernacular systems were such, again showing how they were having a stilt system, which we see very much prevalent in Southeast Asia, where they were used to floods, and these houses would move. So if there is flood in one year, the next year the flood would be in another area, people would just move their houses. So rather than having a fixed location, they would have a very flexible system of living with flooding. And that kind of system is there even for us to rediscover and learn from and adapt to new situations that we are exposed to. So, and then of course it is about utilizing traditional water systems that are located in public spaces for emergency purposes. These systems are not only there for day-to-day use, they also have a lot of purpose to solve when we are faced with disaster situations. So knowledge about our water-related heritage is essential for the recognition of actual situation as well as for future planning and design. The knowledge gaps that we exist when we look at these situations is that there is a need to rediscover our water heritage, traditional knowledge systems, and their evolution over time. We still lack a lot of knowledge that we need to really understand, rediscover. The second point would be that we need to identify challenges and threats related to water, vulnerabilities, and risks due to urbanization and climate change. How are we exposed increasingly to risks? We need to know much more than what we know right now. Identifying the opportunities and potential of water heritage for new functions and for creating disaster-resilient communities. So it's very important for us to not look at heritage just as something to be protected, but to identify what opportunities or potentials that they offer to us. And of course, existing and proposed initiatives for applied research, because this knowledge that has been accumulated over time has to evolve even more, recognizing the current challenges that we are facing, which were not there before. Another thing that in our session we'll be really talking about is the need for capacity building for water heritage. So what does it imply in terms of building capacity? Whose capacity we need to build? And how do we build this capacity? What kind of training or teaching or awareness raising programs we need to generate? How can we use on-site demonstrations or field visits to create this capacity building? So in that context, we'll be looking at the main agenda that we need to develop for capacity building in water heritage that is aimed at different kind of target audiences, ranging from water experts, architects, historians, and professionals from various disciplines. The challenge here is that we have to work with multidisciplinary backgrounds. What kind of educational materials can be developed to raise awareness and on water heritage among broader public? So we cannot talk technical all the time. When we talk to common people, when we talk to communities, we have to really talk in a language that they can really understand. So what kind of educational materials, communication tools we need to develop in order to really address various sections of community, ranging from students to people from other backgrounds. And of course, a third point is what are the potential collaborations that we need to develop between institutions at national and international level. We really need to build bridges between various kinds of institutions. It cannot be done only by heritage institutions or by water or infrastructure institutions. So how can different institutions work together in order to build a capacity? Thank you.